Hi viewers, Mr. Nyati here, your presenter, and we go ahead with section B of a past paper which took place in 2024, the GCE Science Paper 2. And so we are going to go ahead with question B5. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like and share the video. So question 5, B5 reads in section B. 10.5 grams of sodium hydroxide was reacted with dilute sulfuric acid according to the equation. So we have the equation here. The equation is written like this. Sodium hydroxide plus sulfuric acid producing sodium sulfate in aqueous state plus water. Okay, so the question reads, balance the given equation. So we need to balance this equation. Sodium 1, sodium 2. Here we put a 2. There's a video on balancing equations that I did. So you do well to watch that video so that you can be able to know how to balance chemical equations. I will put a description, a link in the description, so that you are able to follow that step-by-step explanation on balancing the equation. So is the equation balanced? No, we have 2 here, hydrogen now has 4, so we put a 2 here, the equation is now balanced. Then we move on. Use the balanced chemical equation to calculate the mass of sodium sulfate. So in one of the previous videos, I did an explanation on how you can find, when you hear a question saying, when you read the question saying use the balanced chemical equation, it simply means the coefficients have to play a role in this process of balancing, of finding the mass. So we are told to calculate the mass of sodium sulfate. So whose mass have we been given? Sodium hydroxide. So you write sodium hydroxide here. That is question, this one was question A. Now we go to question B, Roman numero 1. We write the sodium hydroxide that we have been given, because we know we have the mass for sodium hydroxide. Whose mass has the question demanded that we should calculate? Sodium sulfate. So at this point, you look at the coefficients. What are the coefficients? There is a 2, there is a 1. So you find the molar mass or relative molecular mass or relative formula mass. So we are going to say sodium 23 plus 16 plus 1. That gives us 40. 40 times 2. So we are going to have 80 this side. And then this side we are going to have 23. 23 times 2, that is 46. 46 plus 32 for sulfur. That gives us 78. 78 plus 64. We have, that gives us 142. So we have 142 here. And then now we look at the mass. What is the mass of sodium hydroxide that we've been given? We've been given 10.5. So that 10.5, we bring it just below sodium hydroxide. So say 10.5 grams. What about this side? We don't know. That's the mass we want to find. So that's the whole idea. You identify whose mass you've been given and whose the compound, the compound, the equation, the compound, the compound that the question is demanding you should calculate its mass. So from this point you cross multiply, then you are going to have x being equal to 10.5 multiplied by 142, dividing this whole thing by 80. What are we going to get? So we are going to have, so this must be able to give us, we're going to use a calculator. We'll say 10.5 multiplied by 142. That gives us that, divided by 80. That gives us 18.6375. So since this is our final answer, we round it off to 2 decimal places, which is going to be 18.64 grams of sodium sulfate. This is the answer, and this is the shortest method to calculate that. But if you want a step-by-step calculation, you can still go ahead and do the calculation. How do you go ahead and do the calculation? So from the balanced chemical equation, you find the moles of sodium sulfate. Sodium hydroxide. So you're going to say number of moles of sodium hydroxide. Do not include this so that you have a 2 here. No, you are only calculating the number of moles of this sodium hydroxide. These 2 will come at some point. You are going to see where we're going to be in need of these 2. So when you are calculating the moles, you always eliminate this. So number of moles is equal to mass over relative molecular mass or molar mass, and then you substitute there. What is the mass? 10.5 grams over relative molar mass. Since we're using molar mass, we're going to say for sodium it's 40 grams per mole. 40 grams per mole. So we are now going to do the math. 10.5 divided by 40 gives us, now look at this, is 0.2625. Pick it the way it is, because this is not our final answer. We're going to use it somewhere to calculate the final answer. So you pick it the way it is if it terminates. So we're going to have 0.2625. What are these? Moles of sodium hydroxide. Now that we have found the number of moles of sodium hydroxide, we can now go ahead and use the mole ratio. So again, you need to come back to say, whose mass have we been given? We've been given the mass of sodium hydroxide. And whose mass is the question demanding that we calculate? Sodium sulfate. So, at this point, you can now ask yourself, this is where now the coefficients are needed, the mole ratio. We're going to say here we have a 2, we've used a 2, and this side we've used a 1. And then on this side, where we have used the 2, we have calculated the number of moles. So you bring down the moles. Sodium hydroxide gives us 0.2625 moles. What about sodium sulfate? We don't know. So it's a situation where you convert the mass into moles, use the mole ratio to find the moles of the mass the question is demanding you should do, of the compound whose mass the question is demanding you calculate, and then you convert the moles to mass. From mass, moles, mole ratio, moles, mass of the product. So at this point, you are free now to cross multiply, and then you are going to say x is equal to 0.2625 divided by 2. So what are we going to get there divided by 2? It gives us 0.13125. Pick it the way it is, 0.13125 moles of sodium sulfate. So now that you found the moles of sodium sulfate, it will be easier for us now to find the mass of sodium sulfate. So you can now say mass of sodium sulfate will be equal to a number of moles times molar mass. What is the number of moles? 0.13125 multiplied by 142. We had calculated this and we had found it. So we multiply that by 142. The answer is still the same, 18.6375. Since this is our last and final answer, we round it off to 2 decimal places, and we're going to have 16.64. No, not 16. Is this 16? This is 18. 18.64 grams of sodium sulfate. So you can use either of the two. You can use this method or you use this method. But this method is quite involving for a 2 mark. So I would encourage you to consider this one, which is quite straightforward. This one is involving for 2 marks. You find that you enjoy solving this, but at the end of the day, you end up wasting quite some minutes on the same question. We move forward. The question demands to say, the question says, what type of reaction is involved in the equation? Well, we know that this is a base, this is an acid. What type of reaction is this? Neutralization. So the answer for Roman numero 3 is neutralization reaction. This is how we end on question B5. I hope this was helpful. Thank you. Bye-bye.